Welcome to the blank screen.
Welcome to your awakening. Please take all as your reality is adjusted.
Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen. I was just checking on the YouTube stream to see it is going. Yes, it looks like it is. Can I switch out of that one? Right, there we go. We're back again. Welcome back once again. Another edition of Sol Excalibre on this moon day evening of multitasking, clicking different tabs. Have I got the right tab now? Yes, I have. Hello, hello. Hello to everyone in the chat room so far. Thanks for joining in. Hiya, Taz. No worries. Chill out and relax and listen to us waffling. I know many people have said they often fall asleep listening to me waffling on. Something about that kind of hypnotic tone. Maybe people find it reassuring to hear that kind of background noise. I don't know. People, take things the way they want to take them. I'm sure it means so many different things to different people. Yes, hello, welcome back again. I'll try and find me page. Right, okay. I've just got to say first, you can go out tomorrow with a vaccine passport, then tomorrow you can have fun. Tomorrow you'll live again tomorrow, because today has been locked away. There you go. That's the song for this week. I hope you all don't have too many nightmares about that terrible rendition. And just faux humility. I loved every second of it. Right, hang on. Can I get rid of that? There, right, okay. Oh, I was ridiculous. I just lost connection. I hope so. And it wasn't me that accidentally dropped him out. Yes, he's back again. Oh. Sorry, mate. Click the button again. There we go. Got it right this time. That was me trying to close down that screen share while at the same time it was maneuvering your icon across. So I wasn't sure if I'd accidentally clicked your button to remove you from the stream, which I think I might have done. But anyway, sorted out in the end. There's a good introduction to this month. We're halfway through this month, and it seems to be swinging back again. I did have a quick chat with Society of the Spectacle before we started. Obviously, like we said many times recently, he had to leave and couldn't stay to join in the live show because of the curfew over in Spain at the moment. So the internet cafe where he logs in from would be closing now. So obviously he had to log off and go away. But he did mention the Mercury retrograde, which seems to have become a real thing in recent times. It's like every time some kind of craziness or political confusion or political debacle happens, it seems to be a Mercury retrograde. Something about that, maybe, if you put any stock in all of that kind of astronomical stuff, astrological stuff. Yeah, but there's certainly been a bit of a swing over this week that you may have been picking up on. Certainly for the last few days, it seems to be switching 180 again. What a surprise. Whenever they tell you that they're not planning to do something, that actually is an inversion. And what they're actually letting you know is pretty soon they're going to start saying they want to do this thing. And what am I referring to? Yes, well, we'll get into that in a sec. In the description box tonight, I put perceptionocracy. It was a phrase that just came to mind last week. it's based trying to describe a concept that we've often talked about many times from many different directions in different ways. And certainly it is highly applicable in the modern age with the technology we have now. It was still applicable before the internet, but it's even more so now. Is this process of propaganda manipulation that affects, or is really primarily founded on, affecting people's perception of reality. So when it comes down to it, it's about manipulating perception. And the environment we're living with at the moment seems to be that the majority of the world's governments are moving in lockstep and they are all enacting policies towards certain goals that, if you're aware of a lot of the previous information, you're probably aware of those goals that they're trying to get towards. For some people that may have been, this is another phrase that's been doing the rounds again recently, some people may have been red-pilled within the last 12-month period, and you're starting almost fresh in terms of finding out about some of these things that are going on, the agendas and whatever. You might not be aware of that kind of legacy of information about things like Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, one and the same thing, really. Just an extension of the previous plans and a relabeling. But yeah, you might not be so aware of that kind of stuff. So their end goals, if you're aware of those bodies of information, their end goals seem somewhat obvious to me anyway. I don't want to speak for other people, but I think a lot of people see the same kind of thing. So it's about manipulating the perception of people to herd them in that direction. The pharaoh wants the people to build him a new pyramid. He can't just come directly out and say, hey guys, you fancy building a great big pile of stones for me? Because the people will probably say, fuck that, mate. That sounds like a complete waste of effort. What's the point of that, you mad egotist? They can't do that, so they have to do it indirectly. So they come up with things like, divine right to rule. I am actually the embodiment of the divine Godhead, so you must worship me, and to worship me, you must pile up a big load of stones to prove that you accept that I am a living God. I am a power slave. Go and have a listen to that old Iron Maiden track. There's some interesting little sort of nuggets in the lyrics of that about the power slaves. But yeah, manipulating people's perception. So in a long roundabout explanation like I do, it's trying to come up with a phrase that sort of codifies that concept of we are not really participating in a democracy in any way whatsoever. I can argue that it hasn't really been a democracy for probably 2,000 years near enough. Certainly, what is it, 1800 years? Yeah, anyway, since ancient Greece, probably the only time you ever had a true democracy. Since then, it's always been not true to the definition of the word. It's been manipulated and whatever. Anyway, yeah, in the modern times, I think a lot of people are starting to cotton on to the fact now that you're not really living in a democracy. If you think your vote makes any real difference, just look at some of the recent elections and some of the craziness that's been going on. You think that votes can't be bought or created or manufactured, the numbers can't be manipulated, blah, 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 blah. So for those people that think we live in a democracy, that's a real deep down delusion. They need to swim back to the surface from that one. But I think most people are aware that we're not. You can't really call it a democracy anymore, what's going on. And as I said a few moments ago, the majority of the world's governments seem to be moving in lockstep, which means, well, they're just getting on with what they want to do. And the rest of the situation, in terms of what we see and what we hear them say and what they present to us, is a perceptionocracy. Do you believe us? Do you believe Bojo this week? His latest announcements? I've got to find an appropriate picture for the latest wet T-shirt winner. Which I think Days, you posted this earlier. Yeah, let me just do a quick screen share of that. Because this is just, just satire, just making the point of, ruled by the least amongst you. The winner of this week's wet T-shirt competition. Proof that you too, no matter how chubby and buffoonish and incompetent you pretend to be and all that kind of shit, you too could be prime minister of a whole country, and you too could sire multiple children from different women, and just like the lion wandering through the Serengeti, just sowing your seed wherever you want.
It's supposed to look intentionally buffoonish.
Say again, are you breaking up a little bit?
It's supposed to look a buffoon, just like a harmless oaf.
Yep. Yeah. Perception manipulation. Don't believe that I actually am willingly and knowingly participating in creating policy and agendas that will not be to your benefit. Don't think that at all. No, just see me as a buffoon and an idiot, and these things are only happening because I make mistakes, because I'm not perfect, because I'm just a bit of a daft old or he's not, was he Etonian? I can't remember. I know he was in the Bullington Boys, so he's part of that. Sorry,
Eton and the Bullington Club, both of them.
Yeah, I thought he was. So yeah, I wanted to just chat about that kind of concept and looking at the situation. I know some people might say, well, what's the point of just describing it in a different way? You're still just pointing at the same thing, but really, I think it's the passage of this year, over the course of this year, it has red-pilled. It's a bit of an unfortunate phrase, but it holds true, or it reflects reality anyway. A lot of people have been red-pilled over the course of this year, maybe for different reasons, but it all resolves around the same foundational situation that has played out over this year. There's been a few different elements that have took place, like the elections and various other debacles, like the Epstein Island and all this kind of, there's been loads of different elements through this year. But the point is, many people have come from different directions, but they've all experienced that same kind of revelation moment, the epiphany moment, the red pill moment. Something has happened within their lives, within their perception, that has put a crack in that illusion that's been projected at them for so long. And they've just sort of caught a glimpse through that crack in the wall kind of thing, making a slight reference to Plato's cave, which is something we'll come back to. They've seen something through that crack in the wall, and they want to know more. They want to ask more. They want to look further to see, hang on, what's that there? What's this shimmering on the image? Is this a green screen or is this real?
Because they know it makes no sense. It makes absolute. It's been nonsense from the start.
Yeah, it doesn't reflect reality.
No,
you don't. This has been a big thing recently as well. They're talking about the kind of psychological stumbling blocks. I've referred to them before in that kind of way, as a stumbling block or a hurdle. The things that people keep tripping over. And I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I'm, kind of exempt or outside of this kind of shit. We all do it in one way or another at some point. But the stumbling blocks of not being able to comprehend or deal with the idea alone that there could be people out there that are doing this kind of thing. They could never do that kind of thought pattern.
You just have to look at people like Bill Gates and what they did to their vaccines. Tetanus vaccine, for instance, they put out, I think it was the Kenyans, who were tainted with this hormone that stops them getting pregnant.
Yep.
So yeah, they put, and then they sell these things to these countries. I could go on and on about that because it's shocking, and there's lots of information out there if you can go and look at Gates's shady past and what he's been or doing now. Yep. So there's plenty of that, but it's shocking to see what they actually have been doing over the past 20-30 years. These so-called billionaires running the planet.
Yeah. I think probably one of the all-time classic examples that people can easily reference, because the information is not hidden. It's not kind of like some kind of occultic secret that you have to try and figure out the cryptic code and whatever. The Tuskegee experiments, where they allowed people to suffer from the worst effects of syphilis, just so that they could monitor how it plays out and how the infection spreads and how it affects people biologically and psychologically and shit. That's just one example from not too distant history. If you trace this all the way through history, you'll see it again and again and again and again. This naive idea that the people in positions of so-called power, in the echelons of politics and government and whatever, the aristocracy, etc., they are not altruistic. They are not really concerned about the benefit or well-being of the majority of the population.
Well, look what they used to do to mental health patients just as recently as, what was it? I don't even know when it was. It's probably the 70s, I don't know, the 60s, when they were doing the the front lobe lobotomy, where they'd stick the thing under the eye socket and whack it right up your eye socket and twiddle it about and pull it back down. Wow, that was their medicine to deal with mental health issues. Wow.
I would say it's not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to be order followers that you go against evidence in front of them.
Like I say, there's loads of things they've been at, isn't it, doing to us and experimenting on us, and this new, what I call it now, the gene therapy experiment. So basically what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned, I don't know how long ago, when they started really pushing for the test, I think, I speculated that part of the reasoning for why they wanted mass testing was so that they could have a DNA doomsday book, in the same way as, like, if you studied history at all in the UK, you probably get told about, the Conqueror and his doomsday book and all that kind of, good stuff from history. But he just wanted a catalogue of all the property within the nation, which included chattel, and chattel would have referred to people as well as things like cattle. It doesn't necessarily differentiate. You were only considered a living being if you were a free man or higher in the hierarchy. Anything below that, if you were a serf, you were considered property of the lord whose manor you lived on, your chattel.
Sorry, genetic editing is going to play a big part in the future. So
there is an accelerating arms race that has been taking place over the last probably 2 decades or more. And, a lot of the focus, this is a good example of perceptionocracy as well. They like to get people to fixate on the electronic technology. And I know we've spoken about this in recent episodes, recent broadcasts about, I was trying to point out how there is this deliberately misdirecting trope that is often trotted out there, and it has been for years now, for many years. I can remember it all the way back to the 90s, and talking about this concept of implanting an electronic chip into people so they would tag them like animals. It's like the ID tag that people have put into their pets, in their dogs and cats and whatever. This concept that there would be this little electronic pill or device that they would inject into you. In most recent sense, in contemporary sense, people referring to the concept of there being some kind of micro device or nano device in the vaccine that will do that. But this is, as I've tried to point out, more of a misdirection based on a kernel of truth. The kernel of truth is that they want to be able to track and trace you. Yes. And that doesn't just mean watching you on a camera to see whether you turn left or right at the end of the street and that kind of thing. Now, they want to know all the details about you and your life, and that would include your biological data. How is your body operating? What is your DNA makeup? What is your ethnic genetics, if you have any, all this kind of information they want. So that isn't as simplistic as just a chip under your skin so they can track you on a radar like you're watching some sci-fi movies from the 70s or whatever, you know? That's the misdirection. It is more likely that the biotech will create some kind of recognizable imprint into your biology, and it's that gets traced. They don't need to put a chip in you, and most people now walking around with a chip in there, carrying it in their hand anyway. Yeah, so things like that is a perceptionocracy.
I think they went with the chip like as a sort of a forerunner to what they want to go with, and they were trying to maybe sell it off the back of tragic stories. We can think maybe one of it, obviously, of the Madeleine McCann issue, you know, all that sort of thing. Like, if you had a chip in your kid, obviously you wouldn't ever lose them, sort of thing, you know, like selling it off the back of that. And I even remember, like, even when it was at the time, it was like Man United. They were talking about using them to see how fast their players were running, see how many laps they were doing. You know, they were.
Well, it's just thinking
them with the GPS and so on. You know what I mean? It's so many the different ways they were trying to introduce it, but it goes from being available to being like something like a chip to being something more towards what Cookie's talking about just now. You know.
I was just thinking as well when you mentioned about the classic argument of being able to trace lost children, you know, because you can GPS their tag or something. But the classic sort of problem with saying classic too many times again this week, the fundamental problem with that idea is, what if the technology stops working? What if it malfunctions? What if the battery runs out or whatever, you know, some way that it stops functioning? And also, if that kind of possibility would actually hold true, as in people could have an ID chip put in them so you can track them if they get lost, for that to hold true, then we would already be seeing that with the example of jet airliners that have exactly that device, a tracking GPS trackable chip built into the engines and other devices on board an airliner, you know, but primarily in the engines. Yeah. So how is it that we lose planes? Remember those stories from a couple of years ago? Planes just disappearing into nowhere and they couldn't track them. Oh, hang on. Didn't you have these tracking chips in those devices? So if you're suggesting, if you're trying to use the logical argument, supposed logic argument, that we need to put chips in your children in case they get lost so we can find them again, if that held true, then why haven't you found those missing planes?
I suppose it'll be easier when we've all got a biological passport and take the confusion out of it. You know, then once you're associated with your blockchain number as well, there'll be no confusion.
I think what's more concerning as well is we saw with vaccines back in the 90s, MMR and stuff, you know, the rise in autism or links to autism and this sort of thing. And the next generation of kids who are born with people who, potentially parents who have been vaccinated now and they have kids, what sort of, we don't know that impact's going to be going forward. Like I say, we've seen a rise in autism anyway. It's like huge rise in that. It's huge.
I have an unfortunately cynical and dark perspective on that. And I'm only putting this out there as a speculation because, if you're new to these broadcasts, please be aware of the fact that I will often talk about possibilities, and I am just speculating about possibilities and trying to weigh the potentials of things, of which direction it's going one way or the other. And I have talked about this before, so it's not like it's a new idea I'm putting out there, but it is a very dark possibility, because if it holds true, then that's, I use that background image of the rally at the National Socialists, with the majority of the crowd all holding their arms up and the one guy not, But it'd be far worse than whatever took place in that supposed dark period of history. Because, put it this way, if the way I'm looking at it, like I say, with that dark, cynical perspective of it, they want more autistic people. They don't want less. They don't want to solve the problem. They want more of it. Why? Yeah, because, and I'm not saying this to be disparaging in any way whatsoever, because of the way an autistic mind can be slotted in to functionalities that serve a technocratic system. In other words, and again, please stress the point, don't take it personally. I'm not saying this to be disparaging in any way at all to people that suffer from autism, because for the majority of autistic people, they have social difficulties, social awkwardness, or anxieties of interacting with other people. They have other detrimental effects that make them more have a higher proclivity to seek solitude or to seek certain rigid environments. So in other words, they need very rigid routines, and their environment is not allowed to change in any way. Often that environment as well can have requirements of a very subdued nature compared to the rest of sort of everyday reality. So in other words, no loud noises, no sudden, changes of color schemes and things like that, because they need that rigid routine. Yeah. Also, and again, this is just part of the way that autism seems to affect the mind and the thinking of people that suffer the various levels of it. Yeah? You often get an unusual spike in ability in certain areas for people on the autism spectrum. So they may be really, really low in other areas that we would consider normal, everyday social life, working life, whatever. They really suffer in a way that means they can't function very well at all in those areas. But you then get into some very specialized technical or scientific, or it can be creative form as well. So it could be artistic, or something that is a creative nature, but a very specialized area. They get an extreme amount of ability. They excel in that one area. So for an engineer's mindset, because please, remember, when I'm looking at these possibilities, I'm trying to look through the lens, the prism of what I feel strongly is geared or written into their ideologies and their doctrines and their agendas. It's all about mechanization. Yeah. So they want people who can be highly specialized in extremely technical areas of requirements. So you've got somebody who is totally inept in all areas of life, except, say, for example, higher functioning astrophysics. So they want somebody to study, most complex information coming in from satellites and telescopes about astrophysics. They give it to this guy who can't interact with other people because he struggles so difficult, in that kind of social environment. But if you leave him in his little cubicle and you just hand him paperwork, or you send him stuff on his computer screen, he's an absolute wizard genius to figure that stuff out. That is engineering specialization taken into the biological realm. In recent history, I don't think this holds fast truly, because there's other elements that are happening in terms of the narrative manipulation over the centuries. But in recent history, it has been geared towards things like the use of technology in an external physical sense. So we've had the rise of things like ergonomics, which is the specialized technical adjustment of the environment to suit the biological operator. In other words, they treat the human being as another sort of functioning machine, and they adjust the environment around them to make that person's function as efficient as possible. There's a fantastic scene in an old Monty Python movie called the Jabberwocky, which is I still think it's one of their best movies that they ever did. It's better than a lot of the others, but it's a bit more subtle in the way they get their messages across. But anyway, there's this one scene where the one main character he's visiting an armory, and in the armory they're producing weapons and armor and whatever, and there's loads of people, loads of blacksmiths and apprentices all bustling around and hammering stuff and doing stuff, and they're making this one suit of armor that needs to be riveted. It's got to have the rivets on it to put it all together. And the guy who's making the rivets is all the way the other side of the smithy shop. So that the main character goes, oh, you could improve efficiency if you just move the table over here. And when he does, the whole interaction, the like domino effect of these smiths who had all got into the habit of working in a line production routine, their line production routine was suddenly disrupted and the whole thing falls apart. Yeah, and you get the comedic scene of the catastrophe of everything falling apart. Yeah? But that was that message about the technical specialization with the inclusion of that the unpredictable paradox of the living being. You know, you can't always predict what people do, but anyway, in terms of the things like ergonomics and other highly technical specializations, I think they want more autistic people. Autistic, and again, just to really stress this point, I'm not saying this to be disparaging, but autistic people can be easier to control.
Or more people, or more people that can class as autistic. More people
Yes.
can say are on a spectrum.
That's part of the normalization, and I know we spoke about this a few times over the years. The way the rate of autism has risen is not just about there is literally a physical rise in autism. I think there is to a certain degree, but it's not as much as the total stats add up to. The reason the total stats are so high and going up almost exponentially is exactly because more people are now being dragged into that label when they're not autistic. They've got an unusual personality, or they're a bit quirky, or they've got, you know, strange foibles that mean they don't like loud noises, or, you know, something, but they're not autistic. But the spectrum is being deliberately stretched to include as many as possible so that autism becomes the norm. Everybody will be autistic according to the label, not in the reality, but we will all get a label of autism at some point. This is why they insist that everyone's on the spectrum. No, they are not.
I just, it ties in with a central point I kind of make. It's like an alternative view is seen as psychosis or hate. You know, like anybody that thinks outside the lines at all, it's got to be seen as unwell in some sort of fashion.
Yeah.
Well, when you got doctors like what was his name, Dr. Andrew Wakefield, coming out and saying what he said, and still continues to say, you know, if you go and look for his stuff out there, the stuff he's put out,
and the evidence he was basing his arguments on is still sound. It's still good. It's still the same. You know, the same information can be shown again and again and again. It's not a direct causal link, which is often what they debunk it as. You know, they'll say that he was suggesting that he's got evidence of a direct causal link. Yeah, and that isn't what he said. What he said was there is statistical evidence to show a higher rate of autism in certain groupings of children receiving certain vaccines, the MMR one in particular. That was the main one that created the spike in his statistics that caught his attention. Yeah, because the MMR seemed to do it worse than the other vaccines.
And I'm sure other doctors now who are saying, and I've heard stories, I've said it before the last few weeks, months, people having reactions to this gene therapy. You know, and
it does seem to be holding to what we were talking about. You know, the vaccine, the gene therapy causes the person's immune system to shut down because it's basically trying to usurp the body's immune system. Yeah, so it suppresses the body's immune system, and then lo and behold, they get whatever kind of infection, and that becomes fatal, and then they just get written down as a COVID death. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a circular argument and debunking bullshit when they say like, oh, the vaccine didn't cause them to die. No, the vaccine caused their immune system to stop functioning properly, and then they caught a cold, just a rhinovirus, but because their immune system was totally fucked, that killed them.
And they were 92.
Yeah.
Just saying.
In the prime of their youth.
Yeah. It's getting that all the time. I saw a headline today saying, I'll save it for Wednesday because it's just hysterical how they try and gaslight you, how they try and make things that are so ridiculous sound normal. With the figures that they push out there, and the fact that, all the high death rates are coming from people over the age of 90, or they've lowered the death rate. It's up and down, and these ages are just, you think, wow, you're doing well if you're living in the poison environment we live in, and all the shit people have to put up with, get to the age of 80 even, or, and it's, how long is the life expectancy of each male and female, it's about that, isn't it? Yeah.
Life expectancy went up and up and up over the last century. And in the last generation, it's been the highest it's been in recorded history. If you believe all the recorded history, of course. Yeah. And yet now those elderly people are being gotten rid of because they're extraneous to requirements. Isn't it funny how up until maybe the last year plus, not so much in 2019 that I can recall, but prior to that, in the years prior to that, they've constantly been reminding us about how there's this problem of the aging population and the dropping birth rate. And soon we'll have a population where the majority of the nation will be all pensioners. Yeah, this is the kind of thing that they've been telling us. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, this problem comes along that starts killing off the elderly. Yeah, that's that Thanos narrative again. You wonder why they wanted that idea out in the public, why they wanted to normalize and even trendify the concept of eugenics. Yeah, it's because they knew, I feel, my opinion, they knew full well that just ahead in their timeline was going to be this situation where lots of elderly people are dying. And the majority of the young people go, oh, well, that's more donuts for us then, isn't it? Yay.
Well, it's like that, again, I'll go back to the polio vaccine. I was talking about the tetanus one before, but the polio vaccine, there was after they'd done their little tinkering around with that one, there was a polio which is called vaccine acquired polio, which came from the vaccine.
Yep.
So,
and that is now in some places, I think maybe Kenya. I'm not certain on that, but I know the information's out there. Yeah. Now the most dominant form of polio is the vaccine-based form. So the polio that they've used in the vaccine has now become the most prevalent one in the wild, as it were. Yeah. So it's superseded the original wild illness. It's been replaced by the vaccine-created one. Funny, isn't it? Yeah, and who's making all those vaccines? Who's owning lots of shares in all those pharmaceutical companies?
That guy we said before. Yeah, him.
The one who's knows a fair bit about how to manipulate people's perceptions.
And his father, well, we know this, don't you? His Bill Gates' father was head of Planned Parenthood, which is another, gets billions and billions of dollars funding that.
Yep.
And
donates multiple millions to other groups that do the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or that help further the agenda. So again, it's back to that perceptionocracy.
Yes.
They can project you this image that they want you to accept, this image that they want you to believe, but it's got nothing really to do with what is actually happening in reality and what they are busy doing in the corridors of power and government, etc. They want you to believe the good guy image. I haven't got the video queued up for it, and I don't really want to get bogged down into sort of analysing it and pulling it apart. but when I watched the UK column this afternoon, they covered a latest BBC fellatio piece with Billy Bob Gates, where they'd got a massive screen set up in one of the museums down in London. I think it might have been the Natural History Museum or the Science Museum.
Yeah.
And they'd got absolutely enormous screen with Bill Gates' face on it, like nearly 20-foot tall Bill Gates. And some of the shots they used it was supposed to be like an interview with Bill on the BBC. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from the BBC being used as a propaganda mouthpiece for agendas that are beyond your national government. You know, these are world agendas that are being pushed. But it's presented in such a way that here he is in a temple of science, one of the museums, you know, National Museum, and he's massive compared to the BBC interview, who's shown on the screen as being tiny, you know, almost unseeable in the background in this massive temple of science. The whole thing was about crafting perceptions and projecting a certain framed imagery into people's minds, and that carries the message that they want. Yeah?
So that's the. So am I sharing that? Sorry.
You are. 1 sec.
How did I manage to do that? Sorry, I just
clicking buttons.
What am I doing?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the headline.
Scroll down a little bit.
Yeah, that I saw that tonight, and I thought, here we go. You know, solving COVID is easy compared with the climate. But there's the picture you're talking about.
Yeah, does it say what museum? It's Natural History Museum. Yeah, I thought it might. Because they got the bones hanging in the ceiling, which at one point I thought that was so subtly symbolic. Yeah, like then the camera moves, it pans to the right in that imagery. Yeah, so you're looking with the interviewer on the left, and the Bill Gates face of God screen on the right, and above his screen is the bones that are hanging in that main hall. Yeah, I can't remember if it's a blue whale or a sperm whale. But you've got these bones hanging there. So you've got the image of Bill Gates talking, projecting authority and dictating from the Godhead, and looming over his head is this skeletal remains. And the looming skeleton is sort of almost like a dragon head. It's sort of looking down at the little BBC interview as if he's just about to gobble him up. They really, you know, you could spend an entire episode pulling that one video package apart. The level of subtle manipulation and coding and symbolism and stuff that's included in that. And this is classically what the BBC does. This is the perceptionocracy, the manipulation of the masses, their perception, such that if you get enough people to believe your bullshit, they'll come along and build a pyramid for you.
Yeah.
And then it's the classic one. Obviously, he's got the blue shirt, no tie on. He's got the unbuttoned. It's like he's presenting himself as a man of the people, you know, like
relaxed and
that's all perception management.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't read his emails anymore, does he? I don't
Oh, you never know. He might like sit at home with a jar of Vaseline, sitting there going, I'm in nipples, and he hates me, and they hate me, and all those people hate me. And
I'm sure people listening have looked, know this, have looked into this as well, and seen the history of this guy and what he's been about, and it's getting other people to see it, isn't it? As well, just go and look at the, the backstory of these people. See what the UN, Agenda 21's about and stuff, and what the World Health are really about, and what feeds into that, the World Economic Forums and all these, groups dictating.
Shop fronts to craft the perception that this is not the agenda you were looking for. Yeah. This is not what you think it is. It may look like I'm stabbing people, but not really. I'm actually trying to inject goodness into them. Yeah. The goodness is along the edge of my shank that I'm pushing into their gut. It's not stabbing. No. I'm actually trying to put the goodness back into them.
I'm trying to make them happy. Trying to make you happy. Yeah. That's what it is, isn't it? It's like that meme going around. I've seen a couple of people do videos on it, funny ones. You're gonna not own anything, but you'll be happy, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, all this going about. It's just crazy,
Yeah.
crazy gaslight and everything going on. It's like mentioned it for months now.
Yeah.
How
You'll have no pants, but you'll be happy. It's
The
going to be
earnings
cold.
figure on good.
Mm.
Well, speaking of kind of the inversion, which is in a way like a flipping, I'm sort of segueing a little bit here. I mentioned earlier the fact that over this weekend, they seem to have done another 180. Yeah, and I've been banging on about this point for a few months now, at least, talking about the passport, the health passport. In one form or another, they want you to accept just that main thing is they want you to accept the concept that you have to carry around identification, biometric identification, that at the moment it's been sold on the element of health, which is often the tip of the spear, yeah, that they start wedging in these issues from. They sell you something that is supposedly to help you in your health and well-being. That's just getting the foot through the door kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, they want you to have a passport that carries all your biometric ID on it, which can include information such as your genetic makeup, yeah, and include any relevant health information connected to your genetics.
Essential to what you were saying earlier about manufactured consent, just massaging it into the public's consciousness.
Yeah,
a psyop, PRS.
And I never thought to grab a link to the video I saw anyway of him on one of the news sites. It was probably the Telegraph or something. The vaccine czar, as they've called him in the UK, is it Ahmed Kalini or something? I can't remember his name, but he made a statement, I think last week or maybe the week before, that no, the government has not been planning anything to do with a passport, a vaccine passport. They have no plans for a vaccine passport, was the way he said it. But he directly stated that there were no plans to introduce a passport. You know, just that alone, that statement alone is refutable, because they have been discussing some form of ID or passport for most of the year in one way or another. They've been suggesting the idea, and they've used various subtle attempts to try and get people to ask for it. You know, it's like the way they've been directing hatred towards people who are exempt, and at the same time they keep dropping these subtle, not so subtle hints of, oh, well, you know, if you carry a lanyard with an ID card that says you're exempt, then people will stop harassing you. In other words, even if people are exempt or refusing to participate in the mental craziness of having to wear masks, etc., 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 you know, they're trying to recruit those people into a methodology to justify the requirement of some form of ID or passport. You know, this has been going on for a while now. And as I say, he said that a couple of weeks ago, a week plus ago. And now, over the weekend, in fact, just yesterday, this come up in the news. Let me screen share this one. I've got the right page open. Yeah, then lo and behold, you know, and I've talked about the way they keep doing this pattern of, you know, they'll say, oh no, there's nothing to it, it's just rumors, we're not really thinking about doing that.
Yeah, I heard this yesterday. Interesting, because then they backtrack. You know, they're putting that out there, aren't they? Planting the seed.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't.
This
rule
is
it
all
out.
about them playing the trial balloon game. They've been suggesting this idea for months now. Really, it goes back years when you're talking about just ID, you know, an ID of some kind, ID cards or whatever. But in terms of now, it's been presented from the health angle. You know, oh, you need it so we can see that you've had your vaccine, so that you can go in the pub again or whatever. Yeah, tempting little bait. But they keep putting the idea out there, and they don't care whether you agree to it or not. Really, the main thing about putting the idea out there is just to gauge opinion. That's why it's trial balloon. We'll rumor that we're thinking about doing this, and then watch the social media feeds. Do the people like it? Do they hate it? How many people like it? How many people hate it?
Saying that, Boris today was asked directly, because I saw that tonight, about that, and he said no, that won't be happening.
Yeah.
So this is how they plant the seeds. You see the seeds there, and then it won't be happening for now, but it could, as they progress this thing on into more variants and more madness and more craziness. Who knows what they're going to do next if we don't, like I say, stand up to it in the next few months, and that lie's properly exposed. They're just going to carry this on forever in a day.
The airline companies are more than likely they already have really introduced it already anyway.
Yeah.
It's just that it's under a no-name label, as in they will ask you are required to have a test before you're allowed to travel. Yeah, but they're not saying that the paperwork you receive is a passport, and they're not saying that you have to present your passport when you go to the check-in desk, but they want to see the paperwork that you've had a test and it's come out clear. Yeah. So in other words, they are already implementing the process of requiring a vaccine passport. They just haven't called it that or labeled it that in any way.
It's effectively travel restrictions. Yeah, and it's effectively travel restrictions, isn't it? Because a lot of people will not want to, do it, so they will be prevented from leaving their own country. And as you said last week, possibly your own county, which is what's happening right now. Actually, you can't leave your county or your. That was why
this stood out. This stood out the most to me, because this was something I've talked about for quite a while. And I know there's quite a lot of people out there that have been like poo-pooing the idea, going, "Oh, they'll never introduce a passport. Nobody will put up with it. They won't stand for it." And it's like, well, the majority of the public have stood for a hell of a lot, mate. That 10 years ago you would not have believed that they would stand for, but here we are now. Look what's happening. So when they said we're not going to introduce vaccine passports for international travel, this is going back 3-4 months ago. They put that idea, oh no, we're not going to do that. It's already happening, like I've described. Even though they're not calling it a passport, the principle of the concept is already in play. So now they're rumoring, they're putting the idea out there, they're foreshadowing that you will also include the same kind of thing for inter-regional travel within your own country. In other countries, that is pretty much already happening anyway. Again, they may not be calling it a passport, but they're asking for paperwork that you've had a test and been cleared. So that's the same fucking thing. Yeah, it's just not being called a passport, but it's the same bureaucratic functionality. So I'm sort of pointing this out now, and I'm not doing it to just like go, see, I was right. It's not about being right. I don't want to fucking be right about this shit. Yeah. But it's about seeing the track of their footprints in the direction they're going.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I say, in the next 6 months, and if we get to spring, summer, and there's not that push.
Well, I thought it was interesting.
Something. Yeah.
But Bojo announced, I think this might have been over the weekend as well. And when I say announced, it was more sort of part of a general interview commentary on news interviews, rather than him putting out an official statement kind of thing. But they're going to have a review of the lockdown and whether they're going to let us all out or not, on the 22nd. So it'll be on the 22nd of the 2nd, 2021. As far as I know, there isn't any particular astrological connection on that day. But I'm not massively knowledgeable on all the different conjunctions and stuff like that might be happening. But it just the numerical value stood out to me as like the 22nd of the 2nd. And they're doing the same thing where they're very careful to use ambiguous language or to say things in such a way that they can't be held culpable in a kind of prosecutable sense. So, for example, what Bojo said about the passports is accurate within a limited context. Yeah, as in they're not going to do it yet. yeah, in a limited context. In other words, if you take the short version of the answer, Mr. Bojo, are you planning to introduce vaccine passports? No, there are no plans to introduce vaccine passports until next week when there are. Yeah. In the same way as that vaccine czar said they haven't been planning to introduce a vaccine passport. Well, actually, that's, you know, semantic bullshit, because there have been projects and plans to play out how they could introduce one, how it could be used, how it could be implemented, etc., etc. But there was no date of implementation set. So in a very semantic technicality, you could say that they haven't been planning to introduce it because there's no date set for when it would begin. But that doesn't mean they haven't researched, they haven't planned how they would do it if they chose to. Yeah, once they chose a date.
And they manipulate, master manipulators.
This is all semantic bullshit and ambiguous legalese speak that they use deliberately, because again, this connecting this to that perceptionocracy. A lot of what they've been doing over the course of the year is partly trying to protect themselves, in the sense of they know full well they'll get strung up on the yardarm. You know, if it really gets revealed that any evidence comes forward to show that they're complicit, willingly, consciously complicit in a lot of the shit that's been going on. So they have to play this charade of, oh no, we're not really doing that. This is not the killer injection you think it is. Oh no, this is for your health, honest. You're going to have a shower. We're not going to gas you. You're just going to get clean. Yeah, they're going to clean your blood. Yeah? Anyway. Well, yeah, you get the point, hopefully.
Yeah.
And again, I know a lot of people get fixed on what I think is the stumbling block of, oh, Cookie, you're talking about all these problems, but what are your solutions to these problems? It's, why are you asking me? Have you just transferred your expectation of authority from one face on the screen to this face on the screen? What makes you think I've got all the answers? You're doing the same problem that keeps us stuck in this infrastructure, going round and round this circus game of perceptionocracy. Who do you believe this week? Do you believe that one? Do you believe the puppet on the left? Do you believe the puppet on the right? No.
You're going to move through that, haven't you? That bullshit. Yeah. You really do.
The real power is within yourself.
Exactly.
And before I forget, because we mentioned this just before we started, as part of the reason why we're a minute or two late starting, as per usual, even, this is just like anecdotal sort of background detail, even on the weeks when I've got myself set up ready, and I've got all my windows ready and sorted, and I've got my introduction, the intro video ready to go and everything. So I'm thinking like, yeah, we're going to start on time this week because I've got myself all ready, set up. And then we're chatting away and we're chatting and we're chatting. We're like, oh shit, it's 8:01. Click the button.
Yeah, it happens every week, I think, most weeks.
Talking about the manipulation of perception, and how over certainly the course of the last century and the rise of this kind of mechanized technological infrastructure that is leading us towards a technocratic future, they've been gradually manipulating how people's perception is moldable and to what degree. And that is all down to grabbing people's attention. You can't alter somebody's perception until you've got their attention. Yeah.
We mentioned the attention span dropping, didn't we, before we came on?
Yeah.
That's the fact that they know that they've measured it, haven't they? It's something.
The smarter the technology has become, the shorter people's attention span has become.
Yes,
it's a correlating climb. Yeah, the more they increase the smart tech, in other words, the more the technology takes over your day-to-day thinking that you used to do in your own mind, the shorter your attention span becomes. On the back of that as well, this is where I was meaning it in the sense of how they grab people's attention and how that attention grabbing has been used to mold the perception that's formed around that point of attention. If you think of a point of attention as like your point of focus, I've used this analogy before recently as well. and then sort of like the outer layer fades out into the umbra. It's like the fading out of your vision into your peripheral vision, where it's not as focused, it's not as clear. You get that kind of blurriness, as it fades away. That's that key to the chemical process that our minds developed to enable us to survive in this environment. A simple way to describe it is like the hunter's mindset. And this is why as well, and I know I've pointed this out many times over the years, this is why as well, that the larger proportion of the people who tend to listen to this kind of content or are interested in these kind of subject matters is male, because it's the male mindset of that hunter that looks for a threat and then tries to figure out whether that threat is real or not, and whether it deserves their attention to be dealt with. So in other words, it's like you're scanning the bushes, looking for the creature that could be a threat to you, and you think you see it, and then your focus is zeroed in on where you think that threat might be. And the rest of the image becomes that blurry peripheral vision as you're focusing in closely to find that potential predator that could be a threat to you. They have exploited that. I think it's fair. I don't want to go into like a laundry list of examples to describe what I mean. I think it's pretty obvious. They get your attention, and then they can move your attention where they want it. And if they move that attention down like a funnel that reduces and reduces and reduces until it gets to the jelly mold at the other end, that it then is allowed to expand back out into, and suddenly finds itself stuck in this one shape. It's obviously a lot more to it than that, and it takes an entire education process for them to sort of mold people in that kind of manipulating fashion.
They've started that off with the feed, your Google feed, and your personalized feed, and whatever feed, and this feed and that feed, and that's all like what you like, and they know what you like. So
I got caught on it.
Tracks you everywhere.
Back in the day when 24-hour news first really started in the UK, that was what got me hooked first time round. And I do say hooked because even though at the time I obviously didn't realise it, but after the fact, it was sort of like, at one point I'd have two televisions running, one running BBC 24 News, and then the other one I'd sort of flip through some of the others like CNN and whoever was running a 24 channel. And I'd be monitoring both of them all the time while I was doing other stuff, while I was doing housework or whatever. I'd have them on in the background 24/7 until I went to bed.
Blimey.
But this is part of how you accumulate information, even though, you could say it's polluted information because of the source, where it was coming from, etc. But trying to get those perspectives on what was happening out there in the world at that time, back in the early 90s, mid 90s, whatever. Anyway, back to the point about the hunter's mindset. They learned over time that there seems to be a certain acuity to the hunter's mindset. The male mindset predominantly, not always true in every culture, but in most cultures it was the males that were the hunters. It was that drive of the testosterone that gives the male that ability, both physical and mental, to have that kind of arrow line of planning and execution. So in other words, they look for the threat, there's the threat, right, how do I deal with it? I took a spear at it, done. It's that rapidity of problem solving and the direct line of problem solving that seems to be predominantly the male mind, probably influenced by the testosterone. But as part of that, back in those ancient times, before any of this kind of technology, if you went out looking to hunt your food or to get rid of a dangerous predator that's prowling around your farmstead or whatever, you'd have to have an immense amount of patience, most likely. You would have to go out on the hunt. It would maybe take you at least a whole day or multiple days of trying to slowly track down this animal and then looking for it patiently, waiting for it to show up. You know, why is it that in nearly every tradition and culture around the world, the majority of what hunters do is sitting and waiting? Yeah, they find somewhere where they think the creature might show up, or a pathway that the creature seems to use, and they'll find a nice little position that overlooks that pathway, and then they'll just sit and wait and wait and wait. Attention span was much longer then, because you couldn't be, daydreaming sort of, no. Oh shit, I missed him. No, you would have been watching that pathway, looking for signs, looking for cues of, is it coming? Is it nearly here? Do I need to get ready to fire my bow or throw my arrow, throw my spear? Needed a lot of attention span. As the technology built up and enabled more and more of that task to be decentralized, or maybe even centralized, and kind of like the rise of the mechanized empires, but the task was sort of externalized in many different ways. And then we bring that up to modern times. The way that kind of hunter mindset grew was out of obviously requirement, and the biochemical pathways that would cue the line to survival were built on that concept of, you go out looking for the threat and you sit and wait patiently for it to show up into that center point of focus. So the center point of focus was pulled by that biochemical encouragement of the survival instinct versus the threat to your life. Bring that into that modern time setting, and they have taken that bait of the potential threat, and they have rewarded the biochemical response at a faster and faster pace as the technology got better and better and better, and as the externalization of those responsibilities became more and more almost complete. Now you don't have to worry about predators in your area. There's some other functionary of your society that deals with that, the rat catcher or whatever that works for the council. You don't have to do that. So instead, your mind is fixated on getting that same dopamine response from other external sources. This technological medium was able to fulfill that void. And instead, in that perceptionocracy, and this is what led me to sort of trying to describe this thing in this way. In that perceptionocracy, like in Plato's cave, they show you a shadow on a wall of the big scary creature. It's all fangs and teeth and and you see that shadow on the wall and you go, oh, there's the threat, and your attention goes to that threat. And if it's there straight away, you don't have to sit in a tree waiting for hours for it to walk down this pathway. No, it's there straight away. So you get that dopamine or other chemical feedback that encourages your thinking pattern to follow that neural pathway. So that particular neural pathway becomes reinforced. Does that make sense? So slowly over time, it's a little bit like the moth to the flame kind of analogy. The more they usurp that hunter mindset of, I'm looking for the threat, I focus on it, I figure a plan to deal with that threat, and then I sit patiently and wait for them to be able to execute that plan. Instead, they go, here's your threat, here's your solution, done. So why have people's attention spans got shorter and shorter and shorter? Because they can get that biochemical feedback more instantaneously via an external source than they need to sit and wait patiently to focus on a singular thing, waiting for the actual conclusion that they're looking for, or resolution that they're looking for. It might not necessarily be a conclusion, but hopefully you get what I mean. This is perception molding brought now up to date to the stage where we're given these devices that, like you described earlier, you're doing that, looking for the feedback response. You're You're
Yeah.
scrolling through all these notifications and links and ping, 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 ping. Give me attention, give me attention. And almost every one, you're getting some kind of chemical response in your mind, in your brain, I should say, rather than mind, because it's chemical. But that chemical response is encouraging your search for attention focus to go along a certain pathway in your neural structure. So over time, they sort of lead you one direction, and lo and behold, when you look back behind you, you only see that one pathway. You didn't see all the other possibilities that were branching off before you got to where you are now. And over time, that becomes imprinting, indoctrination, imprinting.
Yeah.
Why is it that so many people struggle with getting through that denial barrier of seeing a face on the screen like Bojo with his wet t-shirt contest picture, seeing that face, and straight away they accept that face is a representation of authority. So therefore, whatever that face says to them has something relevant to that shadow play threat that is in the back of my mind of, the instinctual survival may not be conscious, but don't think it's ever left your mind. It never does. So it might not be, sat there in your conscious mind going, yes, I'm your survival instinct, and every so often I'll push you in a certain direction just because,
I think
it'll be down in your subconscious, and it'll be stabbing you in the ass with its pokey sticks to make you go certain directions, and you won't be aware that that's what's driving you, because you're stuck in that belief in the external authority that's telling you, oh no, I'm not stabbing you, this is actually for your good health.
Yeah, with them trying to destroy families and everything else, it's hard to, people look for validation on the internet, feedback, and get happiness seems from that. Or even if they have got, good families and that, they're still addicted to getting that as the main sort of dopamine hit, or whatever you want to call it, type of feeling of I matter, I'm here, people like me, it's like kind of like it's where a lot of people are at. It's like I find that you've just got to it can get more spiritual in in yourself and that kind of way. And
we've been
not
asked
about validation. Validation is just you searching and looking when we've said before, it's all in you already. It doesn't need, you just be who you are and be authentic, and be yourself. And the problem is with the internet, it sort of almost requires you to not be yourself.
It is the shadow on the wall in Plato's cave. That's the internet. It's not the absolute reality, the truth of reality. It's not. It's a shadow play. Even with the best of intentions, it's still a medium in which we share, that kind of exchange of information and whatever. It's not actually reality.
No, I mean, what we do here, people in the chat and things like that we know that we're all on the same, we're all understanding what's going on, aren't we? We're all seeing the bigger picture, most of us, and we're beginning to put pieces together. And some of us have been on that for, that journey a lot longer than others, but it's all part of this, again, coming into awareness and truth, which I think we've always know that's going to come. We're going to win it. We are going to win this, because it can't, if we see the moment, it's been almost like, a crushing defeat. If those we were hoping Trump was going to do anything, but that was all part of a learning process with people who get sucked into opium shit and things like that. So don't go down that kind of route. Like I say, you and us and all of us together will get us through this. Every individual, it's just changing that mindset up and not letting them crush you and defeat you and, get you to obey what you in your heart's not the right thing to do. And with the information available to you, if a straight thinking human being can see the bullshit, it's not difficult. That's
interesting sort of synchronistic connection here as well. What was it? Several days ago now, I can't remember exactly what day. Like I've mentioned many times, occasionally I'll dip in and out of like TV shows to see what kind of stuff they're putting in that TV show at the moment.
Not Tipping Point. No, please, no.
Don't know that one. No, don't think I saw that one. But I tend to. I look at a lot of things like comedy dramas and things like that, just simply because I can tolerate having that on in the background, you know, because it's not.
Yeah.
Anyway, I happened to look at some of the what's it called, Young Sheldon, and it's supposed to be like this series that's an extension of the Big Bang Theory. I don't know if you remember that or ever saw that. Yeah? It was the character who's like in another synchronistic connection. He's supposedly autistic. The main super genius character that's called Sheldon. Yeah. And this new series, I'm saying new, I think it might have been going for a few years. Is meant to be about him and his life when he was a little boy. You know, when he got into university at the age of like 11 or something like that. Anyway, I was watching one of them, and they started. He goes to start attending college, and at college, one of the courses he signed up for is philosophy. And they do this whole episode about his first class lesson in philosophy, and it's Introduction to Philosophy, yeah. And the teacher starts telling him some of the cheesy cliches that you often get in that kind of intro to philosophy environment. He says you could just be a butterfly dreaming of being a human. And for that Sheldon character, again, like I was talking about earlier, that autistic mindset that has a difficulty dealing with ambiguities. Everything has to be very rigid and solid and reliable. Yeah. So when the teacher says that to him, he freaks out. He's like, "What are you on about? I'm a butterfly dreaming of being a hero. That's insane." You know, that kind of reaction. But over the course of the episode, he ends up coming back to the philosophical principle that was put forward by Descartes, cogito ergo sum, which just translates as I think, therefore I am, or I think I am, with a comma after the I think. I think I am. No, I think I am. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. But the reason I mention that now is because that's really, when it comes down to it, the perceptionocracy relies on manipulating your senses. It's as simple as that, really, manipulating your senses. And when it comes to a screen, obviously that's primarily visual and audio, visual and audible. So if you realize that that's how they're trying to manipulate you, like the shadows on Plato's wall, and you can, take a breath or two and think, hang on, let me reconnect with my true self. My true self is sans physical senses. In other words, doesn't matter about what the physical senses are doing. Your true self exists even when all the physical senses are cut off. Yeah. And this is provable through, lots of evidence that's been available for a long time, but also you can prove it to yourself personally. If you want true gnosis, just put yourself in for some time in a isolation tank, one of those salt water filled tanks. You put yourself in and it's all dark and all that kind of, and you basically just shut down your physical senses. You don't cease to exist. You're still existing. Your mind is still working, cogito ergo sum. Your mind is still functioning. It's just that it's been sort of detached from its physical senses. And in that detachment, there is no perceptionocracy, because there is no middleman trying to manipulate your senses of this is not really what you're seeing. You're seeing something completely different, the gaslighting bullshit.
Yeah, that's why it's good to get out and go and look at ancient sites and things. I get a buzz from that, or going to somewhere, that's got some energy or water or,
reconnecting with things that have a longer, I was going to say lifespan, but really existence feels more appropriate. Has had a longer existence in this reality than any of the bullshit that they're now currently trying to perpetuate or persuade you of. Yeah. So in other words, like you say, place ancient sites, go and put your hand on an ancient stone, and that will help you realize that all this bullshit that Bozo's waffling day after day it's like a fart in the wind compared to what this stone here represents and how long it's been here. And that's even That's approaching it from the point of view of including man in your consideration, as in that stone would have been put there by people, so you're connecting with the minds of those ancient peoples. But you can just do it with the natural environment. You know, go out and enjoy the natural environment, sit and watch the water moving down a river, and realize that that water has probably been all the way around the planet and back, because all the water on the planet is connected. Yeah, that river flows into the sea, that sea flows into the ocean, that ocean's connected to the other oceans on the other side of the planet, and then back round it comes again. So that body of water that you're watching at the time could have come from a glacier somewhere in the Himalayas. People, this is that restriction. They got your attention and they pull it down a funnel, and your world gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it's just the shape that they want.
Cartoon world, maybe.
Hang on, if I can find it, I'll show that image that I took years ago to try and sort of make that point. I put the Buddha quote on it. I think I might have shown it recently, but I'll show it again.
Yeah, well, Taz has put in the comments there. We are born from water, which is correct. We were born in water.
Yeah,
we're all connected, and
that's why a lot of the occultic and the direct claims to do with things like sovereignty and law and kingship and all that kind of stuff is all based around water, because we all come from the waters of life. God created, you know, if you're inclined towards a belief in that kind of divinity, God created everything from the waters. Yeah. But I took this image when I was visiting Canada, 10 years ago, and there was I was going to say leisure centre. I don't know whether you really call it like a visitor centre. That's more appropriate. There's a visitor centre next to one of the glaciers up in the mountains in the Rockies, and we went there, and you could actually walk on near the end of the glacier. You know, that's looking up into the mountains. You know, where I'm stood is only a few hundred feet from the actual end edge of the glacier. Yeah. But it was just that imagery of this is a river that when you first look at it, it's like looking at a river that's frozen in time. But when you learn about these kind of geological features, it's not really frozen as the concept seems often when you're first presented with it. You know, it gives the impression that it's like that forevermore and never changes. Whereas the reality is it does change. It's just that it takes a time period that for the majority of people, they ain't got time for that. They ain't got time to hang around and wait to watch the glacier slowly move through the landscape, because it's moving too slow. Yeah. But that to me was one of those things. It's just like the water just up there on the edge of the picture that you could see could have been there for literally thousands of years. And it's slowly, millimeters at a time, fractions of an inch at a time, moving its way around. Eventually it will break off, it'll evaporate, it will join the water cycle again, and that could be in your drinking water. You know, all of that connected, but some of it moves at a completely different pace to us, which makes our lives not necessarily seem insignificant, but seem quick. Yeah.
Like a flash, the blink of an eye when you compare.
Even that glacier is a fraction of a blink compared to other things in reality. Yeah? Having that longer perspective, larger perspective, I think is possibly just one of those things. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I try not to overanalyze this kind of thing because I think it potentially diffuses it. But why is it that people seem to ask me these kind of questions or gravitate towards some of the stuff that I talk about that is in reference to this kind of stuff? I know you know what I'm talking about, because we've sat and chatted about this kind of thing for years, but
yeah,
it's like, why is it that I can sort of sit around a campfire and talk about these kind of concepts, and it is a little bit like that kind of, people see me as almost like the standing stone. It is that grounding effect. Yeah, you channeling that energy back into the connection, into the natural reality, the true nature, the true reality, and realizing that it's not stopping where you are. You know, it's not a brick wall that ends where you begin. It's passing through you, and it's part of everything, and you are connected into that process, that flow going through. At the same time, there is that fart in the wind that is going past. Yeah. I know this sort of gets into kind of like Stoic philosophy and things like that as well. You know, people in times of troubles, people appreciate those who seem to be able to stand their ground and not be blown over by the winds. Yeah.
Yeah.
They gravitate around those people because what is it that they know that we don't? Why is it that they're able to sort of, you know, just brush this stuff off? Yeah. It's not ignoring reality, but it's being able to, like that hunter I was describing earlier, sit and wait patiently.
Well, doing work on yourself over the years helps, you know, all the stuff I go on about and stuff when I say things, you know, it's all because I've done it myself, been through that journey. And it's still tough. I mentioned it the other week on the reality chat, you know, still have, you know, bad week or things aren't going great, and you know, you've got family issues and all kinds going on. It's very hard, but you still get through it, and you know, you just keep going. That's all you can do. Just keep going, and don't let the bastards grind you down. Really, isn't it? It's that old saying. You know, you just got that tough. You know, I'm a northerner, so you know, I'm sort of, you know,
like the water as well. It's like
it might not sound like I'm from the north, but yeah, I've lived all over the gaff. But yeah, I am northern from, you know, that stock, you know, up there. So it's you know, maybe it's just in you to just keep going.
Resilience.
And
you know, the ability to, and this is not necessarily always a good thing, because sometimes you will tolerate things that are bad for you for too long. You know, I can't think of the proper quote, but you know, it's from some poem that I can't recall. But it's, you know, learning to have the wisdom to discern those things that you can change and those that you can't.
Exactly.
You know, the things that you can't change, you just have to learn to tolerate and bear them. But the things that you can change, you should apply yourself to change those things. And it's learning, gaining the wisdom to know the difference between the two. What can I change and what is just inevitable part of reality.
Yeah.
Changing the sun off.
Yeah. And it's just, it's just how it goes. And I think that's, people have an opportunity now to sort of do that work on themselves as well. I've said this before. There's stuff out there. There's, you know, it's a time for, you know, again, healing family wounds as well. I think that's gone on quite a lot as well over, you know, people being stuck in and sorting things out maybe, or they, you know, or maybe they've split up, you know, it's things have, you know, things have been forced and tested to the max for a lot of people, you know, loads, so. Sometimes
it's better to know who the arseholes are.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's better to get past the charade game of constantly tolerating abusers who just keep pretending to be your friends so that they can carry on abusing you.
Exactly.
That's just like the government. That's just like an abusive relationship. Yeah. Oh, I'm not really abusing you. You just made me angry. It was your fault that I got angry. It's all that kind of shit, man.
Yeah, and that's you got to deal with that shit and clean that shit out. And this is the opportunity to do it. And
it doesn't mean having blazing rows and arguments and, you know, shouting and screaming at each other and yelling and all that kind of shit. Like we talked about recently, you know, so most of the time it's better to just leave something with someone, in the sense of if you say something to them and they get all, you know, triggered and uptight and hurt by what you said, or they're just angrily confused or whatever, and they start, you know, aggressing at you, shouting at you, just leave it with them. Don't try and force your opinion upon them.
No.
You know, everybody's got to find their own red pill, and everybody's red pill is different.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily going to help you or help your cause or whatever if you're just constantly descending into crazy arguments with people just because they're seeing things differently to you.
Yeah, I think
And
I've learned that over the years. Believe you me, over the years.
Certainly, when it comes to your family and close friends, etc., it's better just walk away from it. And that's why I think, like I said, it's better to know who these arseholes are now, and let's stop playing all those fucking stupid games that were part of a very Victorian-esque style of pretense for the perceptionocracy again. Let's pretend that we're all congenial with each other, just because it's polite society, don't you know?
Let's
It's
pretend the masks work. Let's pretend it's all real. And
you can't not wear a mask. People will get upset. What would they think of me if they saw me with you not wearing a mask? Well, they'd think I'm a dick, but they wouldn't think that of you because you're wearing a mask. I'm the one not wearing a mask. So why the fuck are you worried about what they think about me?
Yeah.
But that's that perceptionocracy of people being persuaded that what the rest of the tribe think of them is what they should be fixated on, and that's the threat. Again, using that hunter mine analogy, they've convinced people that the threat is from within their own tribal grouping. That at any minute, the tribe is going to turn on them because they're no longer one of the children of the corn. Or like the body snatchers kind of analogy. You're not one of the body snatchers, so they'll point and scream at you.
Well, I'm seeing less people wearing masks driving cars, which is maybe there is a turning point happening here. Yeah.
I think there has been this spring. A couple of weeks ago, and I know I've said this back then and last week and whatever, to me there was a definite sense of something reaching a kind of culmination point. And it did feel, and I know this might sound a bit odd the way I'm saying it, but it did feel very much like a gestation period. It's almost like, well, in humans, in mankind, it's 9 months, 9 months, 9 days, isn't it? Something like that, supposedly. But what is it for a society? We haven't so much been asked directly, and even if they did ask you directly, they wouldn't give a shit about your choice or opinion anyway. But we have been put into a situation where we are being required to shift our psychological perspectives and expectations and desires from a small nationalistic tribal grouping, because over the last century, 2 centuries, we've gone from, more sort of localized, we've expanded a bit more to like national geographical boundaries. Now you're being required to transition into a global mindset. That's one of the main things that the internet did.
Yeah.
It's like before the internet, your social mindset was participating in what was happening with your own national boundaries more than anything. And I don't mean in the sense of if you're somebody who has a direct interest in geopolitics and global affairs and whatever, you would have been looking at that kind of stuff. But for the majority of the population of the country, the way they thought about the world was, I'm part of this tribe. I'm a member of this country. I'm a citizen of this country. It doesn't necessarily mean they were born here, but they're, a naturalized citizen or whatever. But their tribal grouping was only a certain size. When the internet started, the information feeds that you got connected to, that you were introduced to, basically is that transitioning from a localized mindset to a global mindset. You are now part of the global village. So you're expected to change your psychology to match that global village perspective.
Well,
and who is it? Who is it that's presenting the perspective of that global village? Well, it's characters like Anal Schwab. They're the ones who Billy Bob Gates. They're the ones who, even though he's not a doctor, even though he's not even a scientist, they're the ones that are appearing on 20-foot high screens in the National Museum, saying, oh, yes, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're going to do this and we're going to do, as if he's got all the knowledge and insight of a lifelong career in hard sciences and blah. He's just some jumped up twat from money from a wealthy family that's been positioned Yeah, so that he can play his part.
Mm.
Use his charade of pretending he's somebody that gives a shit about you.
And doing his software updates on you in a human way. Yeah.
Did anybody else notice there was a Microsoft update
Yes,
a few days ago?
And there was another one.
It
I
was
got two.
This is what I mean. Yeah, it was not the normal update. Usually there's one a month, and as far as I remember, it happens on either a Wednesday or a Thursday. Obviously, the date changes each month, but I think it's something like the first Wednesday or Thursday in a month. But whatever it was, there was like one specific day each month that Microsoft would roll out its updates across their network. Yeah. Why is it this week, within the last week, there's been two?
Yeah, I had one tonight before I came on here. I thought, hang on, I just did this on a couple of days ago. And another one there, another big one as well. It took a while.
They'll probably claim it's like, oh, there's vulnerabilities that we have to address or whatever. I think it's more likely Billy Bob Gates is putting his own little view screen in there,
Yeah, spraying vaccine at you.
He's like Dr. Evil in his underground bunker. It's like, who shall I watch tonight? Get the Vaseline, Melinda.
Man, Linda. Yeah.
Yeah, man, Linda. Sorry. Could say that's perceptionocracy kind of stuff as well.
All kinds going on there.
Let me just mention this one story as well. I know we can sort of go over some of these news stories on Wednesday as well, but it just seemed appropriate for me to include this one when we're talking about the perceptionocracy stuff and how they keep putting out these ideas and engaging the public's reaction and then altering their direction slightly to make it seem like they're not actually doing the bad things and whatever. This is coming from Sky News, but this is quoting a Public Health England official. The headline is COVID-19, some restrictions should last until all adults have been vaccinated, senior health official says.
We say bugger off.
Yeah. So this is where I wanted to include this one because this sort of links into people's naive expectation. Again, it's been deliberately crafted that way by the manipulation, so that people are forever tripping over themselves psychologically. But this concept that now that we've got the vaccines and they've been rolling it out and the government keeps saying how they've been doing such a way, and it's like, oh no, don't expect too much yet, folks. No, look, this expert here is saying that, like, until all adults have been vaccinated, not until there is zero COVID, not until there is a reduction in the rates, not anything else. No, it's just all adults have to be vaccinated.
Well, she'll have to get in the queue for all them who are in the dock already. It's just to queue up with them lot. So that's where she'll be.
And it is just
for it.
Yeah, you can easily point this out as being just another weaponized article to push their
fear
manipulative tactics. Because she's just one advisor at the PHE or whatever. One official. She's not the entire body. She's not representing any actual policy that's being passed. She's just making these suggestions. You could call it an opinion piece, really. But the idea is then put out there into the public consciousness. So it's them doing that kind of double speak effect of like, oh yeah, we've got loads of vaccines done and it's great and it's wonderful, but don't think you're going out again. The lockdown ain't going to end. It's just going to change shape slightly. We might call it something different, like regional restrictions or localized lockdowns. It'll have a different label. It will basically do the same thing, but it means we won't be saying national lockdown that gives legal precedence to certain things and blah blah blah.
Brave New World, I thought, but they'll be calling it that.
Let me find the one other that links into that. I thought I kept it open. Just swap the screen share to the other window to that one.
Mm.
Yeah, welcome to the new normal.
The new normal. You have to say it in a computer voice. Welcome to the new normal.
But notice which particular letters are red.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Although you could also say
Enough said.
The new abnormal on that, and you'd still be able to get the same kind of mimetic technique of making the NWO stand out in red. Yeah. But yeah, thanks to Tony for that image. Yeah, these are the steady progress of the constant to and fro of the perceptionocracy that makes you feel like there is actually some kind of discussion going on, such that what you think and feel and what your choices are that you say you want to, what choices you want to make, etc., could potentially make some kind of difference. Whereas the reality is, no, they're just getting on with the agendas. And they're projecting this imagery out to you to make you feel like, oh, well, if we manage to vaccinate more people, all the adults, then you might be allowed out for the summer. Okay, wasn't it only a few months ago that you said when the vaccines are introduced, the lockdowns would end? But that didn't happen, did it? So, and when you said 2 weeks to flatten the curve,
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
We're now like how many months after that? So how much longer should I actually believe anything you say at all? Or would it be more advisable that whatever you say, I just take the inversion to be the actual meaning? So if you say we're going to choose blue this week, I know that you're going to choose red. Is that what we're dealing with? It seems to be more the key to it, rather than them actually talking honestly about reality and what's going on and what they're
not at all.
They're doing in government.
Yeah, they're totally disconnected. And interesting, not seeing many stories coming out of other places where they've lifted lockdowns and they've gone back to normal. You'll just get the usual blurb on the mainstream on the the big site.
One of the other things I put in my notes that connects into that, like talking about all the adults being vaccinated. Again, it's one of those double speak things that they said only a few months ago. When they changed the definition of herd immunity on was it the WHO website, was it the CDC? I can't remember which one now, but Jam Noise did a video about it. I think should find it on her channel, Jam Noise 72. They changed the definition of herd immunity, but they claim now that for herd immunity to work in this new definition of it, the majority of the population has to receive a vaccination. So, in other words, it's not really herd immunity, it's herd inoculation, herd vaccination.
Well, there's a book, I'll have to think what it is and go and check, but there's graphs in that go back to 1920, 1930, 1940, that show you the disease rates at the time, diphtheria and was polio and all these other ones that were, quite rife. And you saw a massive drop about 1930s, a huge massive drop, and then they introduced the vaccines, but then they claimed the vaccines had reduced all these counts down to almost zero when they already were there anyway. And I don't think they could explain that, but they say herd immunity is that what they say, because everybody becomes immune to it, and all these cases really went low. Then they introduced a vaccine afterwards and then claim, because of propaganda and how it works, the vaccine's a miracle. Look at this, all the figures have come down. People aren't getting this disease anymore, which they weren't anyway, really.
It was already fading.
It was already fading out, yeah. And that was the kind of propaganda they were using to get everybody used to vaccines and things of this nature, them pumping things into you.
Another element of why, I know this sounds terribly pessimistic. I don't mean it to be pessimistic. It's another reason to not get your hopes up about them talking about the 15 million vaccines done and rumoring or suggesting that might mean you can go out again in the summer and stuff like that. it contradicts their own statements about herd immunity.
And we know about how
if they're on about reaching herd immunity using their new definition, then that means the majority of the population has to be vaccinated, not just 15 million of the vulnerable and elderly, etc. Yeah.
But we don't know what's truth, what lies coming out of them. Could only be 6 million had it. Could be less. It could, this is propaganda we're talking about, and they're in a propaganda war. This is all about getting everybody out there, as many as they possibly can, to fall for whatever they're coming up with. All these, just choose a brand. What effectiveness is that one? Oh, is it 96? Is it 66? Is it 76%? Is it what?
I still think if you're going to choose any of them, choose the Johnson & Johnson one, because there's a chance it will make you fire retardant as well.
Yeah.
Because of the asbestos in it.
Any of the experimental vaccines we mentioned before that were handed out in I think it was the sort of late 90s, 2000s time, that Bill Gates was behind all these experimental types that they tampered with tetanus vaccines, and they were proven to have done that, and put that hormone in there to make women infertile. All that stuff. They were messing about with things, and him using, was it Path? I think was one of the companies he used to distribute, and all these, he's got all these. It's been going on for a long time. He's been rolling this out, and this is just now the big one, which is
I don't know. We spoke about this several episodes ago. I think it was 2015 when, or the 2014 or 2015.
Yeah, I have to check the timelines. I can't remember.
When Billy Bob made that notorious presentation at the TED thing about if we just reduce the population enough, if we just do a good enough job on birth control, then we can cut down that climate cost, that carbon value, and then roll straight up to today, and you've got that broadcast he did on BBC.
You might as well
connect COVID to climate change.
You might as well have said as well in that speech, go and look at the Georgia Guidestones. That'll be much easier for us to explain it all to you.
Yeah,
just go and look at that, and
my dad
where we're going.
Write the text.
Yeah,
it wouldn't surprise me.
That wouldn't surprise me.
I'm only saying it for sarcasm, but
but
it wouldn't surprise me.
Just see what you think when you read that, and just look what's going on at the moment, and go and look at the UN Agenda 21. Go and look at the Planned Parenthood stuff. Go and look at all these things that they've funded. Yeah, go and look at these things, and go and work it out, and go and see what other people have written about and talked about. It's in plain sight, really, and just enough people need to know it. Yeah,
I think I know we've got somewhat of a sort of select viewership. The people that tend to tune into these broadcasts are already quite aware of a lot of this stuff anyway. So
yes, I know we're going over stuff. It's like singing
preaching to the choir a little bit.
I know, but yeah, we can't help it. It's good to know, though, isn't it? What really is the the bigger picture, which really that's it. This global order coming in, and this is what's happening.
I went to a chicken pox party, a pox party. Yeah. When I was a kid, my mum took me, to I think it was my cousin. They put us together, and eventually I had the chicken pox as well.
Yeah, I remember having that when I was about 7, and having chamomile lotion. Was it dabbed all over you? It was horrible.
Yeah. I used to like having the chamomile bath. You just put some of the chamomile in the bath and just sit and soak in a hot bath with that in it.
Yeah.
But no, facts are being changed to suit the current agendas. Thanks to Taz as well, sharing all the information and links.
Yeah,
just sort of put that up on screen just in case the chat doesn't come through properly, or takes days and days and days before it shows up or whatever. And just to repeat, I know I've said this nearly every episode now, but I think it needs to be constantly repeated so that people are aware, and the news about this situation spreads. It's like, if you're trying to share links, try, but there's no guarantee that stuff will get through. And there doesn't seem to be any method to sort of avoid the algorithm or predict the algorithm. Some things work, some things don't. So if you've got a link you want to share that you want to post, try it, but there's no guarantee it will show up. Same as even on Skype as well, I've noticed that it doesn't always show everything. It seems to crop things out sometimes, like when we're trying to scroll through the different images and stuff.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah.
And there's some that'll appear in the kind of gallery view, and then others won't appear.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah. Because I was just thinking it's probably about time. I'm not going to play the gallery music this time until I get that a bit more sorted out and organised to a way where it can be more appropriate as like background music. I'll show Mr. Wet T-shirts.
Where's that tie? Is it just a really short tie? I was thinking, where's he stuffed that? Because you can't, unless it's just
maybe he sort
cut it with a pair of scissors and just stuffed it in.
Maybe it's tied to the top of his sports bra to try and hold his sports bra up.
Yeah.
His training bra.
Has he been taking tips from Alex Jones? Maybe, I don't know. He looks a bit like he's beaten.
He's going to tear his shirt off any minute and start squealing like a pig. Yes, it is photoshopped, just in case anybody got the wrong idea. It seems very appropriate. This is why I wanted to show these ones, because this is like, we've been talking a certain degree. I know I wanted to sort of stick to that kind of perceptionocracy stuff, talking about the manipulation of perception thing, but we have also mentioned the eugenics, and this is stuff that is there in the background constantly when you start to look for it, and every so often it pops up more directly like this. Yeah. And as I mentioned, Billy Bob Gates and his notorious speech about the calculation to bring the carbon footprint down. This is what they're talking about. If they do such a good job on birth control.
Yeah, these are the NGO people, aren't they? These are the ones that are funding all of these types of adverts, which are splattered all over the promotion, to promote it. That's where they spend all their money on the advertising, the propaganda, basically.
Yeah. Perceptionocracy, molding perceptions.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I haven't actually read that one, so I don't know for sure. Strains similar to Wuhan caused 38% of all cases of the flu in the United States last year. That's from 1996. Yeah. And they're talking about a Wuhan flu. I don't know the veracity of that, but yeah. This is a kind of, I suppose you could call it a project that Localized has been working on. This is about some of the subtle symbology that's encoded into imagery, in particular on some of the news channels and other mainstream broadcasters. And what Daisy's pointing out with this is the crooked arm, which is a partial subtle symbol of the swastika kind of imagery. And obviously the swastika is not what it's portrayed to be. It's an ancient symbol, a Hindu symbol, but in the altered version that we've got from history, its meaning, its connotation is what they're constantly trying to reinforce. It's like you always get taught about supposedly there's only ever been one Holocaust. There's only ever been one mass genocide. It gets reinforced. It gets pushed to the top constantly, even though there's been multiple genocides throughout history, and quite a few of them were a lot worse than that period of the Second World War. But, just as he's exiting, he's like, right, I've done my job, I'll be going now. But
he got off, didn't he? He got off.
Yeah, the impeachment failed again. Yeah. So they've done the same old kicking the can down the road, playing their games again, and it's gone nowhere. And I think that was the last one from this week. And this was
a holiday.
Again, making the point that even though they keep making these suggestions that, it might get better soon, any day now, folks, we're going to have a meeting next week and we're going to review whether you're going to be allowed to do this, that, and This is all that kind of gaslighting game of keeping your attention on their hook, and that reinforces their claim to authority. Because while you keep giving them any what's the word for it, kudos, as in, you know, believing what they are claiming, they're telling you both sides of the argument constantly. So they're keeping you hooked on that bait of like, oh, well, you can go out when we tell you you can. That reinforces their claim to authority over you and your life. You know, you can go out when you choose to go out. You know, but they want you to be in a mindset where you externalize that authority to them. That's just like, and again, I know it's a kind of base description, but I mean the connotations deliberately. The reason I use this description is because I think these connotations do matter, but it is the gimpification of the population en masse. This is the same kind of abusive relationship in a BDSM relationship between a master and a servant. Even if the servant, the slave, is willingly choosing to join in that kind of relationship, the way the relationship plays out is still the same. The master has to force the slave to submit, and the slave has to accept that the master has all authority. Therefore, the master chooses for them. Not they lose their free will. They don't choose anything. They only do whatever because the master says it's okay for them to do it. The master has given them permission. It's the same thing in terms of a government.
Voting.
Them keeping people fixated on that kind of element of the situation as well drags people's attention away from the year-long questions about the veracity of their claims in the first place. So things such as, do masks work or not? Most of the public have been psychologically pushed through manipulation of their emotions into this fixation on the question of, well, can I just get to go out somewhere? Can I go on holiday? Please, can I go on holiday? And the master's there going, oh, only if you wear your mask all the time. Yeah. They don't question whether wearing a mask works or not. No. Just be fixated about whether you're going to be allowed to go on holiday or not. I know this is a curtailment of people's general leisure time and pleasures, and not even including the stuff to do with how you earn your living and your business is being destroyed and your elderly being killed off and whatever. No, this is them restricting your liberties. How long have your patients able to put up with this? Again, what I was talking about earlier, that hunter's mindset of having the patience to wait for hours and hours and hours for that fraction of a moment when their attention is required, for those few seconds when that animal turns up and they go, it's there, I've got to fire now. They've been sat there for hours and hours and hours waiting for that moment. This is them playing that game with you constantly. You just want to go on holiday, don't you? You just want to get away from it all. You just want to have pleasure and leisure in the sun. Don't worry about whether any of the scientific stuff we're saying to you is real or truthful or factual or whatever. No. Just fixate on when you get your pleasure back. They have the ability to drag this out for years and years and years. So we have to be prepared. Prepared's not really the right kind of word I want. We have to be cognizant of the reality that we will need to have more patience than them. In another way of saying it, you've got to be able to stand your ground because they're going to keep throwing shit in your direction.
Yeah. And the other thing is 99.7% of people survive.
Yeah.
So
it's one of the main things.
Wild of us.
Yeah. Why are you so scared? Are you a 92-year-old with comorbidities in a care home? No. Then what are you scared about?
Yeah.
You're scared of something that has a 0.3, 0.4 chance of making you really ill? Then why the fuck are you getting in your car and driving around? Because the chance of you having a fatal accident in your car are a hell of a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
but you still get in your car every day and drive around, don't you? Well, when you're allowed to. Right. And I think that's, we're just gone past the hour, so
Yeah,
I'm going to
cheers,
finish
Cookie.
it up there. Thanks for joining in the chat. Thanks to Dave for joining in. I know his connection wasn't exactly 100% tonight, but it was good to have him join in with the chat again. And thanks to everybody in the chat room. Thanks for participating. I'm sorry I haven't done shout outs or anything tonight, and I've only had a few quick glances through the chat, so I hope there's lots of good stuff in there. It looks like there is. Cool.
Yeah, lots of chat going on. Yeah, loads.
And thanks again to Taz for sharing the links in the chat and all the good stuff. It's brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for your attention, folks. We took your attention for a little bit, for a couple of hours. Hopefully you can at least, gain something from what we've been waffling about, yakking about, talking about, pointing at. And we will be back again on Wednesday for the reality chat on the Reality Chat channel at 8 p.m. GMT, so about the same time as was tonight. Steve Tagoose, as far as I know, is on Thursday night for his mystery show, and Dr. Rock will be doing his radio show on Post-Truth Media, which is 9 p.m, isn't it? Yeah, that starts 9 till 11, and also music as well. They play
on a Saturday. He does a music
and
show
on a Saturday,
on a Saturday about 9 o'clock. He said, I think.
Well, if you check the page, the Post-Truth Media, you'll obviously find all the times and information on there, rather than me just trying to remember it off the top of my head. Anyway, thanks again, folks. We'll see you again soon. Don't believe all the hype. Cut cheese.